welcome. This video is part 2 of the bold, colorful 12-piece capsule wardrobe for the 18-inch doll. On the part 1 video, I sewed 5 out of the 12 pieces. Today, I will sew a quick version of 6 of the clothing pieces. I will make the dress and some of the accessories in part 3. If you need a video with more details, watch the video pictured. The link is in the description box. Follow the blue arrow. I will make the shorts following the basic pattern instructions with no changes. Now follow the pink arrow. I will make the pants and make a variation. The pants will have a slight flare. Let's begin by looking at the fabrics. The first piece is the sleeve from a recycled shirt. This next fabric is a kitchen towel from Dollar Tree, which I will use to make the blouse. I also have a recycled t-shirt. Next, there is a fabric remnant, followed by another recycled t-shirt. I'm going to speed this project up a bit by tracing my pattern onto freezer paper, which you can find at the grocery store. The next step is to iron the freezer paper pattern onto the fabric, making sure the right sides are together. I'm drawing a line for the pants to have a slight flare. I don't want the pants to look like a skirt. The plan for the shorts is not to make any changes. The shorts will follow the basic pattern instructions. This is where you apply my sew, then cut method. My method differs from the commercial pattern makers. Take it to your sewing machine and stitch along the curves of the pattern, sewing just next to the pattern's edge. Cut along the lines of the paper pattern, at the waist opening, down the sides, and at the bottom of the pants. Remove the pattern. Now I will cut 1/4 of an inch from the stitches, which will give you a seam allowance. Clip the curves. Occasionally, I receive a comment that my patterns are too large. The pattern might appear oversized because a seam allowance was added unnecessarily, or the pattern was printed with the wrong setting. There are two printing options: fit to paper and actual size. Choosing fit to paper will enlarge the pattern, so it's important to select actual size on your printer. If the garment ends up too small, it typically means that you cut the pattern fabric, then sewed. Put the shorts on the doll to determine the desired hemline. I typically like the shorts to hit the middle of the thigh, but this time I think I'll opt for a longer length. Pull the pants so that the seams are in the front and the back. At this point, you will have an inseam. I prefer to sew the hem before stitching the inseam. Pin the hem while the fabric is lying flat. Once the hem is done, sew the inseam. I just noticed that the freezer paper pattern has a larger leg penciled in. The last time I worked with this specific pattern, my goal was to create a wider leg. The pattern that you purchased shows a more fitted leg opening. I want to emphasize again that you do not have to draw in a seam allowance. Simply sew beside the pattern's edge. This is the knit fabric, while the other is woven, so either can be used for pants. Try the pants on the doll to check the fitting and the flare. Mine could have flared a bit more. I will probably make more of a flare the next time. And yes, I used white thread. You can match your thread to your fabric if you prefer. I often use white thread when sewing for family members. Make it easy for yourself. They're not likely to critique your work. Let's turn the pants inside out and take a look. With knit fabric, there's no need to finish the edges. For woven material, it took a bit longer since you need to finish the seams. So you can see the inside. I finished the seams with a zigzag, and this fabric frays quite a lot. If you want to, you can use fray check, but if you're not going to be washing the doll clothes, I've used this before, just around the edges. Works fine. If you are interested in purchasing my patterns, I now offer them exclusively through my own website and online store. I no longer sell on Etsy. I have floated my 3 best sellers onto my own shop where I can provide a more direct and personalized experience. I have loaded my 3 bestsellers. I have 15 plus patterns stored in my laptop that I will eventually upload. Please keep checking that. You can pause the slide if you're interested in the information about my store's payment process. It's very similar to most online stores' checkouts. Follow the blue arrow. I will make the blue top with a variation. The blue top will have puff sleeves. Now follow the yellow arrows. I will make the other 2 tops and make variations. The tops will have curved neckline and collars. The pink jacket will have a lapel. All right, let's prepare the tops. I've already laid out this top on some fabric. As usual, you iron the freezer paper pattern onto 2 layers of fabric with the right sides facing each other. Since I'm planning to add puffy sleeves, I'll need extra fabric for that. For the polka dot shirt, I'm using a rounded neckline pattern, which will make sense later. The other shirt had a V-neck. I also used the long sleeve extensions. This is what is left of the kitchen towel from Dollar Tree. It can make a fun graphic later, perhaps the Be Happy design for a shirt or the picture on a small apron for a doll. The jacket, I won't have to sew shoulder seams. I just place the pattern on the fold. I had enough fabric to do that. So you're just putting the pattern on the fold. You're going to go ahead and sew the shoulder seam on the other 2. And if you were making it short sleeve, you could go ahead and sew under the arm and down the side. But since I am putting sleeve extensions in, I traced those areas. Same on this one, and of course, same on this one. There's no need to include a seam allowance. Cut exactly like the pattern shows. For the neckline, open it up as you will be attaching the sleeves here. Make sure to place the right sides together. This is the right side and that's the right side. Line up the crease on the sleeve with the seam on the shirt. Remember to press every time you sew a seam. This is what it should look like, and it will make sense shortly. Now you're ready to sew the side seam, stitching slightly above the marked line. Then continue down the sleeve. Once that's done, cut the neck opening, turn the garment right side out, and give it a good press with an iron. And you have a finished long sleeve. Well, I'm beginning to lose my natural light, but I want to demonstrate that you could stop here and not make a variation to the shirt. However, I'd like to add some puff sleeves to this piece. This is an example of how you can use the basic pattern. You don't need to purchase a new pattern every time you want a different look. By using this simple pattern, you can create a variety of styles. I plan to add a lapel and a collar to the blouse, along with a cuff to give it more of a blouse or shirt appearance. For the jacket, I want to add a collar and lapels. I will keep the sleeves as is. I will also add a facing to the jacket and hem both the sleeves and the bottom of the jacket. I haven't tidied up the raw edges yet, so you can see that it frays quite a bit. However, I did add a facing, and I will include a link where you can find a more detailed explanation on how to create a rectangle facing instead of cutting tiny little facing pieces. I still need to hem both here and here, and I did finish up the seams using a zigzag stitch. Here's the variation of the puff sleeve with a cuff. It's important to make the cuff large enough so it can easily slide over the widest part of her hand. Here's the inside of the top. You could add a slight curve if you like sewing set-in sleeves, but an easier way is to mark the edge of her shoulder and draw a chalk line from that point to the bottom of the sleeve under the arm. I cut off the area of the sleeve and attached a rectangle. I gathered the fabric, gathering less on the underside than on the top. And when you attach the cuff, you will gather equally all around the cuff. Here's the shirt I created in a previous video featuring a cuff, collar, and even a pocket. I always use just the buttons. I avoid making buttonholes on small garments. I'll include a link to that video in the description box. Wow, that's a lot of polka dots. Once again, I used the practice or the scrap fabric since I only had a small amount of the good fabric. I didn't want to risk making a mistake with my good fabric. Let's take a look at my progress. More often than not, I will baste rather than pin in small areas. It's difficult to maneuver my sewing machine in tight spaces, so I will also opt for hand stitching instead. For the placket, you fold a rectangle of fabric, sew it to the front, and then top stitch it. You can refer to an adult shirt to understand the construction. I made use of the already hemmed kitchen towel, which was convenient. On the other side, I zigzagged the raw edge, folded it, and top stitched it. I'll explain how I made the collar next. To finish the raw edges of the collar, I used a strip of t-shirt fabric since it is stretchable. I will backtrack a bit. I can use my practice fabric as the collar pattern, turn the collar to the inside and align the collar point, sew along the folded edge. Turn back to the right side, sew the collar to the right side of the neckline, and then sew your t-shirt fabric as the binding. You could take measurements, do calculations, and all that, but math isn't really my strength. Instead, I'll show you my approach. This creates a nice lapel and collar. Here's what I do. Of course, I'm always looking for an easier way. I cut a strip of fabric. I just make it longer and wider than I need. Then I place the two pieces right sides together and trim the excess later. The first step is to sew the seam down the front. Now I'm ready to trim the excess fabric. I'll check for symmetry. You can measure if you prefer. I usually just eyeball it. Some of you might remember Nancy Seaman, my sewing guru. She used common sense method of sewing rather than strictly following the commercial pattern directions. She influenced my approach to sewing. She recommended trimming only one side of the seam to reduce bulk. I noticed several other bulky areas that I will also trim. It's important that the lapel and collar have a sharp point. So this is the easy way to make a lapel and collar. I'm going to hem the sleeves tonight in front of the TV and put a hem